All right, let's talk about something that literally shapes the world right outside your front door, how your town gets built. It can seem super complicated, but really, it's just the story of how a community decides what it wants to be when it grows up.
You know that feeling, right? You see a brand new apartment building where a park used to be, or a road that seems to come out of nowhere, and you just think, who decided this was a good idea? Well, believe it or not, there's a system behind it all, and today, we're going to pull back the curtain on how it works in Norway.
And to make this really stick, we're going to follow an actual project from start to finish, the plan to build new welfare housing in a neighborhood in Kristiansand called Gimle. We'll start with the big idea, then look at the city's vision, the binding map, the neighborhood plan, the final blueprint, and of course, how to pay the bills. We're going to see how a simple idea becomes a real building.
So, where does any of this even begin? Well, it all kicks off with democracy. Every 4 years, a new municipal council gets elected, and it's their job to get the ball rolling.
The very first thing they do is create something called a plan strategy, or planning strategy. Just think of it as the council's brand new 4-year to-do list. They take a hard look at their community, figure out the biggest challenges, like in our Gimli example, realizing they need more welfare housing, and then they decide what to focus on.
Okay, and this next bit is absolutely crucial to understand. That planning strategy, it's just a list of ambitions. It's a vision. It is not legally binding. The document that has the real teeth, the one that turns those ideas into actual law, is called the kommuneplan, the municipal master plan.
And that brings us to the main event, the master plan. This thing is the cornerstone for the entire municipality, and I love thinking about it in two parts. You've got the city's soul, and then you've got its skeleton.
So what do I mean by that? Well, the first half is the samfunnsdel, the soul. This part is all about the community's vision, its values, its dreams. It's inspirational, but it's not the law. The second half, though, is the arealdel, the skeleton. This is a legally binding map that gives the whole city its structure. It says you can build houses here. This part is for parks, and industry goes over there. It's the rule book.
So, what does a city's soul sound like? Well, for Kristiansand, the vision might be a sentence just like this: to be a compact, green, and socially sustainable city. It's a beautiful idea, right? And it sets the tone for every decision that comes next.
And here's where the skeleton shows its strength. If you want to build those welfare homes in Gimli, but the arealdel map says that land is a park, well, you can't just start digging. You have to go through a whole formal, public process to change the map itself from green area to housing. The skeleton is the law, and you can't ignore it.
Okay, so once the big citywide map says an area is zoned for housing, the planning process starts to zoom in. We go from a satellite view right down to the street corner, getting more and more detailed.
And this table just lays it out perfectly. You see how it works? We start at the top with the kommuneplan, which covers the whole city. Then we zoom in to an områderegulering for an entire neighborhood. And finally, we zoom all the way down to a detailregulering for one specific project.
That middle step, the områderegulering, is the neighborhood plan. So for our Gimlet project, this is the stage where they'd figure out exactly where the bike paths are going to go, where to put a little park, and maybe even set rules about using green technology in the new buildings.
And at last, we get to the detailregulering, the final blueprint. Now, a lot of the time, this part is actually handled by a private developer who's bought the land. They get to decide exactly how tall a building will be and its precise location, but, and this is a huge but, they have to follow all the rules that were set in those bigger, higher-level plans. Of course, a plan is just a pretty drawing on a map until you have the money to actually build it, so let's follow the money.
This is where something called the economy plan, or the economic plan, comes in. It's the city's 4-year financial strategy. It's the reality check that connects all those big dreams from the master plan to the actual money in the city's bank account, and it helps prioritize what gets built first.
And you have to think about the ripple effect. Let's say a private company builds the new homes in Gimle. Well, all those new families are going to need public services, so the city has to use its economic plan to budget for the new roads, the new water pipes, and maybe even a whole new kindergarten that community will need.
Now, you might be sitting there thinking, this is all pretty interesting, but what does it have to do with me? Well, it has everything to do with you, because this entire system has a door built into it, and it's got your name on it. So let's talk about how you can make your voice heard.
At several key points, the whole process opens up to the public. When a new plan is first proposed, you get a heads up. Then comes the public review period, called a hearing,
where anybody can send in their thoughts and feedback, and the municipality is legally required to review every single comment before the council can take a final vote.
And listen, here's a pro tip. Your voice is way more powerful if you get in early. The best time to make an impact is when those big decisions are being made, like when they're talking about changing that legally binding aerial del map, or when a whole new neighborhood plan is up for public debate. That's your moment. And if you remember one number from all of this, make it this one: 6. 6 weeks. That's the minimum amount of time a plan is open for public comments. That is your window of opportunity to dig in, get informed, and make sure your perspective is heard.
When you boil it all down, it really is like this. Planning is just a big, long conversation between a community's dreams and the hard reality of its streets and buildings. It's a complicated conversation for sure, but it is one where you have a voice.
So, we'll leave you with a question to chew on. Now that you know the blueprint for how your community is built, how do you think it should grow? What's your vision for the place you call home?